Product Compliance Tuesday, first one of this year. Welcome everybody. We're going to look back at what's happening in the world of batteries, back and to the future. Let me switch to the presentation. So we'll start here. First things first, a disclaimer. I've made a lot of slides, but I also will say a lot of things and respond to questions. That doesn't mean that these are legally binding. We're giving the best answers possible based on what we know today, and the real truth and details will be available in product IP requirements list when you use that. So I think a disclaimer is needed. It's me, Casper ter Horst. You can find me also on LinkedIn. I'm one of the founders of Product IP. We are, in the meantime, we've crossed the 30,000 threshold for international users. We use our digital solution on working and dealing with product compliance. And in the meantime, with supply chain compliance when it is related to product compliance, which is definitely the case with batteries. It's actually one of the first that will be completely intertwined from mine to waste and then reuse that waste again. So really circular. The IP in product stands for information platform and also for IP address, as we are a web-based solution. We are also a proud partner of skeleton athlete Kimberly Bos. By the way, this Friday we will be off as a company because we were all celebrating, hopefully, her World Championships title. Anyway, we'll cheer for her, running for skeleton world champion in Winterberg, Germany on Friday. Why we do these sessions, and actually Andre and Kevin Rodler together with me have a training in March 6-7. Why we are doing that and why we're doing this kind of sessions is the problem is that we don't understand the problem. That's often the case. It can be incredible complex if you don't understand the lingo, the language of legislation, and if you don't see the layering and where it's actually intertwined. And once you see that, then it still works. So Compliance Tuesday, from us, Product IP to the market, 10 years plus already, thousands of people have joined them. What we try to do is create, basically with you, a common ground, a common language about various parts of legislation. It makes it easier for you to deal with. It makes it easier for us to deal with you when you have questions, because now when you have understanding of the questions, you can actually more phrase it and say, hey, Product IP team, we are here and here trying to do that and that, and we're running into this and that. So the language. The problem is we don't understand the problem. Let's try to solve that. I'll take you quickly back to what we ever did last year with Compliance Tuesday. We have a look at station in Brussels, and the European Union is using the analogy of a train station and trains to guide us through developments at legislation. And there are 6 platforms, main chapters of European legislation in development. Each of those platforms have trains. The other have still to be built and depart, are announced, so to say, and other already have arrived. Look at the total, 637 at the meantime. It's an incredible number. Today we focus on platform 1. For product IP, this is just a small part, because these are legislation that are in development, but there are already existing legislation. And under that legislation, there are maybe national deviations, and there are guiding documents, and there are modifications, and there are standards under it. So this is a funnel, a 1-year funnel, I believe this was 2022, about what we digest in a year in order to maintain the quality of our database. And that's a little bit the same as with this 637. Casper, these are not all relevant for non-food product compliance. Okay, you have to read that first before you can judge that. Yeah. And for you, it's the same with this. You need to read a lot to digest in order to be able to digest what is relevant for you. And that's what we do. Um, that's what we take fun and pride in. But it's a lot. That's why we call it a regulatory tsunami. You cannot run from it, but maybe we can ride the wave together. But it's definitely a lot. Platform 1, European Green Deal. It says a little bit about the context of this legislation, the battery waste battery. Andre, it's odd, you know, you go packaging and packaging waste regulation, battery and waste battery regulation. It's typical Brussels to be inconsistent in language. And Andre, you will probably say later to me, don't call it waste because you can reuse them again. And that's about Green Deal, circular economy. It's very relevant in that case. This train, not as in the last time where it still was underway, has now arrived. 2024 or 101. Actually, that's almost like it's Q1, February 18. Last Sunday, it became active. All those legislations have their own page. You can really find it. The links are in the presentation that you will get. You can find that legislation. You can actually follow up on different kind of publications that are there. You can be in contact with the relevant teams. So it's, yeah, you can say it's democratic or not. Yeah, it's democratic. You know, you can reply to draft publications, and it doesn't really matter if you reply on behalf of a trade organization or just as an individual entrepreneur. It doesn't matter. It's all relevant. A quick reminder for not all of you, because last time we were with many, but not with 160 that are now here today, or the 330 that signed up. We did a detailed session on this and other legislation, and these are all available on Project IP YouTube channel. So I'm not going to repeat everything that we did at that moment. Yeah? So the keynote is quite more comprehensive as last time, but still dives into certain details. If you really want to go back to the start, you need to have a look at that yourself in your own time on YouTube. Now I'm going to switch first to Mentimeter because I want to have some interaction with you. Since I'm not in the same room with you, you already probably were using your smartphone, so you can now use it again. Just quickly follow the QR code and sign in, because I would like to take you on a small storyline and have your feedback there. It's very simple. It's anonymous. We'll record the interaction and add it to the presentation and make it all available for you to download. And if you don't want to use a QR code scanner, you can go to menti.com and use the code 11752444, and you can run it on your desktop computer as well if you want. All right. Can I quickly see if it's still working just by pressing somewhere on the map? I don't need to be accurate. It's just a test to see that it is really working. And I expect that most of you will be in Europe, and I know some will be in the Far East looking. America is still sleeping, but makes sense. This is also relevant probably for supply chain roles. If most of you are in Europe, you'll be really on the far end of this piece of legislation. If you look at the way batteries are produced with all the various rare earths that are in there and special metals that are in there, these are mined. So I think the supply chain later, if you really will dive into that, will span the globe in that sense. And I'll address that part later. Well, with 68, Mentimeter is working. Final test. Yeah, I do expect that yes, of course, is bigger than the not yet, of course. Doesn't matter if you are in the not yet group, you're welcome today. Good, it's working. What kind of day was it yesterday? Do you know that? And what kind of day was it last Sunday in the US? Yeah, it was Monday, that's true. It's very interesting, this. Well, rainy day, Rosenmontag, beginning of the week, battery regulation, national holiday. Ah, this is very interesting. That's why you are in Compliance Tuesday, because I can tell you, actually, it was battery day. Um, there's a reason for that, because it's a focus on the way we are using batteries as a consumer. Um, so there's also something like called Smoke Alarm Day, where you all change batteries, but Battery Day maybe is a placeholder for that. The 18th is National Battery Day in the US, and the 19th is Battery Day in Europe and the rest of the world. To be honest, I would have said the same as you guys. I had no idea, but I made this presentation, so uh, I'll take you on a small story. I was last year on the Global Sources Fair and the HKTDC Electronics Fair in Hong Kong. By the way, we'll be there, Global Sources, in April again, and we will be browsing the HKTDC Fair in April. We don't have a booth on that show. We are walking that show, and first I would like to tell you that the amount of portable energy storage systems that are available on the market is exploding. It makes sense if you look at the way you are using products in your house, especially when you're doing some DIY work. These are most of all battery operated. On the other hand, the technology to store energy and convert that to 230 volt is also not too complex. So either you have portable tools that you want to charge from a portable battery, like a power bank, but then a drill, cordless drill, from charge that from a power battery. It's better for you and more convenient than rolling out a long extension lead. But you can also use it to power products when you are maybe having a picnic somewhere. So first of all, the amount of products is exploding. So there apparently is a market. We also went to visit some of those that sell batteries, because there's batteries, AA batteries, and we asked them if they knew about the new digital battery passport of the battery and battery waste, or battery and waste battery regulation coming. Yeah, most of them will say, "Ah, we have heard about it," but actually, a few, I would say, the most of those that produce batteries says, we don't see any change happening to rechargeable batteries. Nobody wants rechargeable batteries. And the argument was that it's just a small percentage of the current market volume is in rechargeable batteries, and therefore consumers don't want to buy rechargeable batteries. That's an interesting logic. That is like looking at planes coming back from a war and looking at the holes that have been shot in the wings and say, okay, we need to reinforce those areas where the holes are. No, you don't. These planes still came back. This is reverse statistics. The reality actually is that the market will grow. And this is even despite legislation. The market for rechargeable portable batteries will grow. And the reason is you and I. We are becoming more and more involved in sustainability, in green, it just simply makes sense. Rechargeable battery might be a little bit more expensive, but it's a one-time investment that you can reuse and reuse and reuse. And this becomes more important because we are using more battery-powered products, and we're getting used to charge products, not only things with batteries. So I found this perception of the market quite interesting as a start. This growth in the market will become even more significant when the market is forced to move towards rechargeable batteries. And this is not written specifically in the legislation, but if you read in between the lines, there is virtually no way that non-rechargeable AA and AAA batteries can keep up with the requirements. They will become too expensive simply because of all the extra that cost that you need to pay, for example, for carbon footprint, because they're so inefficient. Yeah. Or it's like with energy labels. You maybe could still produce certain old style lamps. Yeah, but you cannot, there's no energy label anymore that you can stick on it. So you cannot really place them on the market and make them available. So you don't need to write explicit to say non-rechargeable batteries can no longer be produced. You don't need, you can just write legislation in another way. So the tendency is go from an unhappy phase to a happy phase when we're speaking about batteries. The market will grow, but I think, and that's also probably the reason why you are here now with 179 people, is that when we really speak about batteries and battery legislation, the emotions are running quite high and perhaps you feel a little bit drained. I had a discussion with Andre last Friday and we were also discussing feedback on the ERFA meeting in Germany. I can imagine getting a little bit drained. There's a lot of things going on and you can only do so many things at the same time. So what are your emotions when we say battery and waste battery legislation? Get it out of your system before I start really to dive into the presentation. Then I know what to expect in the chat later. Annoying, that's good. I like that. Yeah, yeah. You see, these compliance Tuesdays have very, very various goals. Get it out of the system. That's one of the goals. Good. Unclear, confusing. Yeah, I can. It is the modern legislation has chapters on what they want to achieve, and they describe quite a number of products, different type of batteries, and then they layer it in first this and then that and then that. So I'll hope by the end of this year, this presentation, you'll be more happy. Too much deadlines. Cool. I like that one. You can keep this page open to type in, but you can also type in the Q&A. I will have a look at that later. And then I'll go back to my keynote. Keep the emotions running, guys. That's good. So I'll have the Mentimeter open. You can go record your Q&A there, or you go to the Q&A in the chat. Then, what is actually that we want to achieve with this new regulation? There's three things. One is energy transition. There is tremendous need of batteries, especially for electrical vehicles, but also for energy storage. It's very efficient to store energy that you have produced by alternative sources to use it again when there's no wind or when there's no sun. So we need buffers, and energy transition requires buffers, and batteries are buffers, essentially. So to give you an idea, we make a lot of batteries, but we need to scale that up almost 20 times, which is massive. If you want to do that, it involves a lot of aspects in the supply chain. You need to mine materials, so you need to consider where you get your raw materials, but you also would like to reuse raw materials. That would be essential. That's the second step, the circular economy, because there is an end of life of a product, even if you can recharge it a lot of times. But does that mean it's the end of life of everything that we have used to produce that various products? And you can recycle batteries and reuse materials. And when that reuse, especially on the scale of, let's say, 20 times the production of batteries that we have today, the demand is high. You can imagine that it makes sense and economically affordable to actually start to recycle. Yeah. those raw materials, there always has been a discussion, especially social media. Oh, there's not enough of this. Oh, there's not enough. There's plenty of everything. It's just not in the same location everywhere. So, and it's not always easy to extract it, but economy of scale helps. And at the same time, you see that there's a lot of things going on the development of all kind of batteries. But we talk about lithium, cobalt, copper, nickel, magnesium. And if you look where they are in Africa, in Latin America, in China as well. But if you look where they are in Latin America and in Africa, you really need to consider labor conditions, you need to consider environment, you need to consider forest that is there, animals that live there. So we have a responsibility. It doesn't really make sense to solve an energy storage problem in Europe when you be shooting yourself in the foot because you're killing wildlife and starting climate change effects on other parts of the planet. So look at that on the horizon. We need a better internal market in terms of how we sell the products and how we can reuse the products. And that is the European market as entirely, but for the collection, and we still look at how processes go in countries. Yeah? So the way in the Netherlands we collect batteries could be a little bit different in and in Germany, but the goals are there, and the stakes are higher. So we want to recycle more, but we also want to set thresholds on how much of the recycled materials we're going to reuse in products. So new batteries in the future must have materials that come from batteries that are recycled. Why is Brussels mandating this? It's very simple. If you don't put it in a law, look in the mirror, you won't do it. Not that you woke up this morning and say, I'm not going to do it, but there's so many other things that you have to do as well. It's just a matter of priority. So since we don't make it our priority ourselves when we wake up in the morning, somebody makes it priority for us, and there's no escape. Will that mean that the world tomorrow for you in your business model will be different than today, yesterday? Absolutely. So if you feel that the world and the way you deal with that world will be the same in 2 or 3 years, I can tell you it won't. It will be in for a lot of surprises, not just for this battery regulation, but for many of the legislation that is in development or coming live in the coming months and years to come. It is really impactful. Of course, we want to harmonize. Harmonize is have a similar set of rules all over Europe. That is good. Circular economy, we need to promote that. And as I said, we need to reduce environmental and social impact. So this is basically the 4 dots on the horizon. Keep that in mind. Very simple. Somewhere is mining, somewhere is producing, somewhere is using, somewhere is collecting. And from collecting, you need to be back to producing. And then we can using it again, and then collecting. So there's always new, but there need to be more and more, a larger amount over time of reusing into the products. The first part, mining, producing, we have their aspects around social compliance, ESG and CSR aspects. Then you look at producing, using, we talk about product compliance because you really need to focus on, is that battery safe during usage? Can I repair it? Is it not getting too hot? Can it withstand, I don't know, environmental aspects, etc. That's product compliance part. And then the last part, the collection, is the extended producer responsibility part. The reusing is actually the result of EPR, and then it becomes raw material again, then it is part of producing. Yeah. I put it in a line. Is it circular? Yeah, it's also circular. It doesn't really matter. I added this green procurement there because maybe not you yourself, but maybe somebody else in your supply chain, along the supply chain, maybe your customer. If you are involved in offering products to municipalities, government or governmental organizations, dealing with this kind of legislation and proving that you do will definitely be mandatory part of procurement. So I call it green procurement. If If you cannot demonstrate in a way that you are dealing with this appropriately, then you cannot participate in those tenders. I do expect that large companies will start to implement this green procurement themselves as well. Now, one of you, maybe one or two of you said it's very complex, it's very layered, it has so many aspects. And that's true because it covers all battery types. Maybe there come more battery types, but probably when there come more battery types, they will write it into the legislation. There's legislation considering portable batteries, and there are some exceptions for button cells. It is considering what they call SLI batteries, starting, lighting, and ignition batteries. These are the large batteries that are in your traditional car, your petrol and diesel cars that you need to start the engine. Then that's quite new, especially, Andre, correct me, it's new for recycling, well, LMT batteries. You address that later. Light means of transport, LMT, scooters, electrical bicycles, quads, those kind of products. And then larger vehicles, EV batteries, and industrial batteries. Industrial batteries are all the other batteries, but also that you use for energy storage, and that is a category specifically within industrial batteries. Doesn't matter shape, doesn't matter volume, weight, design, material composition. So that's why I say they already made the scope so that it doesn't really matter, everything goes in that. Also, when in or part of a product. Yeah, that is the interesting thing with the battery. A battery is a thing on its own, or it's part of the rest, and that makes it complex. And when you look at certain aspects later, you probably will start to make decisions. Do I really want the product with a battery? Or can I just buy it without a battery and let the consumer buy a battery? Yeah, that might be one of the solutions. If you cannot deal with the volume of the problem, you might want to scale down the problem first. The portable battery means any battery that is sealed, doesn't weigh more than 5 kilo, is not an electrical vehicle, a light means of transport, or an SLI battery, and not designed for industrial use. Okay, so these are your typical A, and your AAA-like batteries. Yeah. Button cells, DC, 9 volts, etc. LMTs, they are not more than 25 kilo. No, otherwise it's not light anymore. They're meant to power traction. So traction wheeled vehicles could be just the battery powering an engine, or you can also use some human power. You can also define it another way. It's type approved vehicle category L. And L categories are 2, 3, and 4-wheel vehicles, including powered cycles. So you see that legislation is intertwined already. And the SLE batteries, you know them already. You have replaced them probably a few times when you had your car in the garage for an annual check. The EV batteries are new. For many of you, you probably don't see them or use them yourself for replacement, but they are part of traction. It could be still L, but they're also M, N, and O category and in trucks. So if you look later at the thresholds and the timing of the legislation, you will see that they are focusing on LMT and EV and industrial batteries first. These are the sections of other EV batteries. And industrial batteries are not the others. But basically, these are your power systems, more than 5 kilo. Or what they call an SBESS, a stationary battery energy storage system. That is the power pack that you could have probably in your basement and storing solar energy from your solar cells. So you can use that in the evening when there's no sun anymore. Later, when you look at it at the timing, you will see that they are putting more emphasis on those category of batteries that are expanding largely as volume in the market, which makes sense. Yeah. If you want to regulate something and you can regulate something that is relatively new, it's more easy to regulate that than to adapt. So the AA in the portable batteries, yeah, there's legislation applicable for them, but the impact is still a few years from now. The result of focusing on EV and LMT, don't forget, in most of the electrical vehicles, there's also AA size or style batteries used in those packs. So by focusing on the large volume growth areas of the battery producing business, it could well be that the remaining part of the battery producing business is piggyback riding on these changes. It doesn't make sense for factories to have a sustainable and a non-sustainable part of production in batteries. They will just shift to one. Yeah. What is new, fundamentally new, which wasn't before, is that there will be a declaration of conformity for batteries. Typically, Brussels are introducing declaration of conformity for those types of legislation that require more attention of the management than before. Because a declaration of conformity is a legal process that where actually the management says, yeah, our team has done a proper job and my team has all the tools and all the budget and all the means to do that job, and therefore we can declare that there is an assumption of compliance, and I sign a document or that somebody else signed a document on behalf of me. If you do sign those documents or actually attaching CE on the product, but you don't have budget and your team doesn't have the right tools, and you are aware that it's actually a mess, then this kind of action is called fraud and forgery, and that's liability of the management of the company, and that's why they do it. It doesn't really change the product; it just changes focus. Look what they did with ROHS a couple of years ago. They made it under the CE declaration of conformity regime, but it didn't change at first any requirements. So they are serious. Yeah, they're taking this very, very serious. And on that declaration of conformity, we need to declare various things, and what we need to declare will become more and more in the coming years. So sustainability will be on there, but not in the beginning. Safety requirements, definitely, but there must be standards. The safety requirements for the AA battery, well, they are there, but safety requirements for LMT batteries or industrial storage systems, this might be new for that part of the industry. There will be labeling and information requirements, not only for recycling, but also to inform the consumer, like with an energy label. You know, if different type of batteries, different type of AA batteries have different kind of properties, resulting in different kind of pricing. As a consumer, I want to understand why you charge me more for this AA battery than that battery. Where is the difference? Okay, it's capacity, how much energy is in the battery, how fast can it charge, how many times can it charge, and after X amount of charging, how much is the capacity still? It's like with an energy label, a performance indicator. So you and I, as a consumer, can make a well-informed decision. Transparent in that sense, yeah. An energy label is also not hidden. The battery itself should not present a risk to the human health, safety of persons, property, or the environment along the whole supply chain. Yeah. So we need to declare that. Okay, so this is the first legislation where sustainability, ESG, CSR aspects are actually part and will become part of a declaration of conformity. That's definitely new. Don't be scared of it. It's manageable because you don't need to do it alone. It's work. Yes, it's work. What kind of model? Well, the declaration is always about a model. So it's a type that you buy either from somebody and they share declarations with you, or something that you put on the market under your own brand. The whole system of roles in the supply chain, importing, distributing, branding products, and becoming a quasi manufacturer. It's not different in this legislation than you are used to. There are no new roles. So everything is described. What is a fulfillment service provider? What is a distributor? It's all described. What is relevant is that if you need to declare something about the conformity and it also has sustainability aspects, you're basically declaring a whole supply chain. And that means that if you do have another production route, it is another model and it is a new declaration. That doesn't mean to say that variations of the production route to a model could not be on one of the same technical file, technical documentation, and declarations. But if you have a product with a battery and you need to declare about that product, you're also declaring about the battery. And if your supplier changes the battery, then that battery comes from a different supply chain, then you also need to redo your declaration of the product that has the battery. Does it make sense? I do believe it makes sense. Is it work? Yes. Is it complex? It's not complex. It's work, but somebody needs to tell you that they changed something. That might be complex for the one that changed something. So it's definitely work. But the skill is asking questions and getting an answer, or having an opinion about answers that you don't get. Nothing to do, that skill has nothing to do with batteries. You probably are here also because you heard about there will be coming a battery passport, and why is that different than a digital product passport? It makes sense later. Certain products with batteries are really a product with batteries. You know, a power storage system is a battery related product entirely. You could say, it makes sense. That digital product passport is in fact the battery passport, vice versa, because it's just basically a battery, an energy storage system. Exactly. And the reason why they come up with that battery passport is if I have a power storage system and I've used that for a couple of years and I want to resell that or refurbish it or reuse it, you as the next one in the supply chain or buying that product, you actually want to know how good is it. So that battery passport, interesting enough, will have also dynamic elements, either that you can see on the passport itself digitally, it's not a paper document, or the product itself can tell you that information about, I've done so many recharging cycles, my original capacity is still 89%, etc., etc. Because you cannot tell it from the outside. So the battery passport has different topics that are really interesting for you if you want to judge the remaining quality of that battery powered unit. The moment you have batteries in products like power banks or a torch or something like that, then you're not really interested in purely those battery passport aspects. Then you are interested in the product, and then we call it digital product passport. The digital product passport might still have a page about the metals used in the battery, the rare earths used in the battery. But that is the difference. The moment you really talk about a battery passport, you always talk about a product where the feature is mainly energy storage. Yeah. Casper, why didn't they just call it digital product passport? Yeah, because they didn't ask me. Very simple. Where are we? Well, we are ready. We are building the future. We have been available as functionality to use public files since November 2010. That's not a typo. But we can only be ready for things that are really ready and defined. And I know you have a lot of questions about this battery passport. Ready in our side is we already are working on the framework. We know that the information has to be shareable. We know that the information will be really coming from your vendor, goes to you as Pro-TP user, and you will need to share it to your private label customer, and they probably want to export it to use on their own digital product passport. This is what I mean with ready. We need to program that systematic, that layer. We need to look at GS1, who is together with other entities defining the labels in the fields. We need to ensure that the system we build is robust. We need to ensure that the data can be collected by the Googles of this world, because it needs to be able to be indexed by search engines. You cannot have that information on a Google sheet somewhere in the cloud or somewhere between the firewall. That's what I mean with ready. We prepare the technology framework so we can launch depending on which product and which aspect when needed and when things are becoming finally clear. And I will show you what I mean with that later. So now we're going into the nitty-gritty. And then perhaps many of your questions are already answers. What will be applicable? Okay, so at the left side, I have listed a number of topics, and then on the top line, you see different batteries. So there will be a requirement about CE marking and declaration of conformity, and technical file related was already always as a requirement. It is applicable to everything. It shouldn't surprise you. This is not the date slide, it's the next one. Then you will have restrictions of substances. There is restrictions with cadmium, with mercury, and with lead. It's actually not new. It's just written again because it will be relevant in the future that some of the thresholds and prohibitions, so the forbidden substances for certain products, the thresholds will go down, or you need to inform the consumer that it's there. That's why you have a separate restriction of substances on mercury. Then carbon footprint, 3 levels. It starts with having a statement on carbon footprint. I'm not quite sure if SLI will be there or not. So there's different things written in different expert guides. So I've just put it there, but it's definitely there for LMT and EV and industrial batteries for 2 kilowatt. It starts with making a statement about the carbon footprint. The statement is defined or will be defined, a paper. The second one is it has to become public. That means a label. So that is like an energy label kind of thing that consumers need to see when they buy products. And then as a third step, there will be a maximum threshold. So Europe will define these kind of products, the amount of carbon footprint that you can have for this kind of product cannot be more than, probably will be related to the amount of capacity or power that it can deliver. So there will be thresholds. So this is like where you can compare it. You can compare it maybe with energy labels. We did have energy labels, and then you had washing machines that were A label, then they became A++ and A++ and A+++. Then Europe says, okay, let's redefine the energy labels because the industry needs to have a little bit more challenge. And then the A++++ wash machine became a B+ machine in the new system. Those thresholds are there to put the pressure and keep the pressure on the industry. There's no use in producing a lot of batteries when there's no limit on how much carbon you can produce on that. Doesn't make sense. The goal is to reduce. So these thresholds will be there. The same is for recycled content. How much of the battery actually is starting as raw materials using materials coming from old batteries. You will also see there in the dates, it would be crazy to ask that today, because the volume of the batteries will grow in the market anyway, and that means that there will be more recycled material or to be recycled material becoming available. And when you have that in the market, you need to restart reuse it, but you need to put the dates there. Otherwise, the recycling industry will not invest and prepare for these kind of systems. Performance and durability requirements, that is comparable with energy labeling. So consumers will know, okay, this battery is a little bit more expensive, but it's a better one. Makes sense. All of those aspects will have somewhere a place on label and markings in various steps. It doesn't matter in legislation. You read it, markings must be A and B and C and D and E, and then somewhere else you read, but C will be only applicable on this type of battery per then. Okay, why they didn't write that on the labels? This is not how legislation works. By the way, this is how prototyping works. Different aspects will become relevant in different parts of time. For you, it's relevant when you start to design labels and artwork that you know we need to have space for certain aspects and we need to probably change them again. Yeah. The notorious digital battery passport, as I told you, on light means of transport batteries, EV batteries, and industrial batteries over 2 kilowatt. It makes sense. Yeah. And those are also the products that will have what you call a BMS, a battery management system, information on the status of the battery. How old is old actually? And you see that for industrial batteries, that part is just for the storage solutions. Also something that is often on our FAQ, what do we need to do with remove and replace requirement? Actually, it starts with the portable and LMT. which also makes sense. You know, the SLE is very easy to replace because you just take the whole unit out and you just put a new accu, new SLE unit in. Which is a little bit silly that you need to replace your whole car if the SLI battery is gone. EV and industrial packs, they are a pack. So you just replace the whole pack and you probably bring it back to the original manufacturer and they will recycle it. And the same with EV, it's part of the car. But for LMT and for portable batteries, there's many products, even bicycles, where you basically had to ditch your whole bicycle after 4 or 5 years because the battery was really used up, which is normal. And you couldn't find a replacement battery, or you couldn't find, or you could find a replacement battery against a very expensive price from the original source, because if you would break up the battery to replace one cell, you would also break up all kind of software, which makes your bicycle unusable. This has to stop. Typical. Why this has to be legislation? Because you, when you go home after this session, these are the things that annoy you as a consumer. And apparently the industry is not willing to fix it all by themselves. So we write it down in a law. Yeah. So don't worry. Sometimes you are annoyed in your work to solve some problems that are easy for you when you're a consumer. How will this work? Well, actually the ease to remove and replace, getting a battery out of a product was already a requirement in order to recycle. It doesn't make sense to, you know, have a product and then fill it all up with certain chemicals that harden out so that you can never get the battery out of the product anymore, because then you cannot participate in recycling. But this is also, why should I throw away a very expensive product because I cannot simply replace a small battery? And how this has to be done is with basic tools, a basic tool set, which is like a screwdriver and not a hammer. And for portable related batteries, it needs to be the consumer. And for LMT, it can really be an expert or a service industry. It doesn't need to be the consumer. Are there exceptions? There are always exceptions. There are always exceptions when there's a reason why the battery should not be replaced for example, safety reasons of the product. Think about certain torches that are used in explosive safety environments, like gas stations or oil refineries. There are always reasons why things have to be made in a certain way, because if you don't do it, it will be a risk. Yeah. Will this influence phone makers? Yeah, definitely. Because these are the portable battery users. LMT, so bicycles, scooters, e-bikes, definitely. Yeah. Supply chain due diligence requirements are obviously also relevant for everybody. So now let me go to the Q&A and see if I answered some questions already. When you get the UN 38 transportation report system on the dangerous packaging documents for sea transportation, are these documents still valid for re-export? This is nothing to do with this session. This is nothing to do with battery legislation. This is to do with transportation, nothing to do with this. In the case of Bluetooth headphones, for example, where small individual lithium-ion or lithium polymer batteries are used, is it not enough that the batteries can be removed with standard tools and disposed of properly? Does it also have to be possible to replace the batteries with new ones, even if they're not commercially available? It's not very smart to use batteries that are not commercially available if you then need to throw away an entire Bluetooth headphone for a small price battery. Definitely that industry will change. But I'll come to a slide about that later. So UK-based requirements to take back waste batteries back manufacturer is in Singapore. This is too complex. I will talk with Andrew, and it's recycling. Is it required to label the battery with the chemistry on it? How details is required to be? For example, is lithium battery enough to give the required information? That will be a yes/no answer. There are definitely more requirements on what is in the battery, and it is going to increasingly more information. At the same time, the tendency is to have a lot of information available digitally. I hope that the digitally route will win. and be implemented long before you have to print all the information on the batteries, because they're definitely very small to print on. But I can tell you, first of all, you need to know a lot of more information, and then you need to start to share it. And I'll come to that point later as well. I'll probably go to the slides first. When do I need to do what? So you're probably will happy that you get a keynote from me later and have a look at this, because this is why it seems to be very, very complex. Although not everybody that is here is and doing portable and SLI and LMT and EV and industrials. Pick your battles, I would say. The dates go up to 2030 plus. So it's really 6 years ahead. Certain things, August 18th, CE marking in DOC. I'll come to that later because they've written down things. This is like doing the RED new legislation and don't having any harmonized standards available. There's no harmonized standards available today. So it's interesting to make declaration of conformity if you have to fill in, if you have to leave them blank. There are no due diligence requirements yet, so it's interesting. Restrictions of lead, quick, and cadmium. These are not really a lot different than we have today. There will be exceptions for EV and NMTs. So that's why the date is like today. So yes, they mentioned them again in legislation, but they were already there. Carbon footprint statements, 28, 25, 26, 2030 for storage systems, 25 for electrical vehicles. I've looked at everybody that's subscribed in for this, but you are not in the EV business, I can tell you. NMT business, probably, some of them. So you still have time. Carbon footprint label level 2. It's very, very, very long time ahead still, if you're not in this business. So there's a lot of aspects here that actually probably will be solved by the battery industry rather than by you somewhere else that's importing and retailing products. Yeah, because the battery industry, in order to survive, will adapt. And that's what we right now here in Europe, the market size of Europe is not only massive, but these kind of requirements that Europe has written down is not so much different than what is written down in California, or even in China, or in Japan, or in Australia. And so you can look at this from, oh, this is very complex. I cannot solve this. But you are not a manufacturer of batteries. So solution comes from two sides. But to have the information, or to get and store the information and then deal with it, that probably is still on your end. Recycled content statement first. So this is typically, the statement will come from the producer side, but you need to deal with the information flow. It doesn't change anything on the batteries. Same with performance durability requirements. It will be statement first, threshold later. Yeah. I think the product category that has the most impact at this moment will be light means of transport. People making bicycles, people making scooters, people making all kind of steps and etc. on 2 wheels. It's really the category that has most of the aspects ticked and most of the dates that are quite nearby. It's also a large volume and a large growing volume. Yeah. Easy to remove replacement requirements. I know we have this discussion already today, but this is 27. Or is it today? Yeah, easy to remove, that's already today. But to replace, I read 2027. Supply chain due diligence, August next year. Okay, if you're buying products 9 months ahead, that August next year is around the corner. Yeah, so I'll come back to this maybe on the questions later. CE marking, initial requirements will be for the carbon footprint and the use of recycled content. Those two will not be part of the declaration initially. Okay, so there you see we have a CE declaration that needs to be gradually encompassing more and more. The portable batteries, the AA batteries, and the industrial battery packs under 2 kilowatt hours, this is like large power banks, are under a self-declaration process. That means just CE declaration by you, not involving any notified body. All the others will require notified bodies for two aspects. You need a third party that will confirm your CO2 calculations and the percentage of recycled materials used in the battery. So it makes sense that that process is in the timing in parallel with the requirements. There's no use to require you to have a notified body for recycled materials if that requirement is not even applicable today. So it's like different steps in different dimensions for different batteries. And if you focus on one type of battery, it really starts to make sense. And now I will explain you why I mentioned that when we are ready, There are no notified bodies today. So it doesn't make sense for product IP to prepare declarations of conformity for notified bodies specifically. We prepare you to be able to generate declaration of conformities in a proper way. But there are not even notified bodies today. Casper, we need to do it today. There are no notified bodies today. Go to this link, click on Nando, search nothing. Yeah. They won't be there in the next months. Yeah. That's just what I mean with product IP is ready. Casper, we want to make declarations of conformity. Okay, that's fine. You need to have harmonized standards on declaration of conformities. There are none. That's what I mean, we are ready, okay? What about removability and replaceability? Yeah, it applies to portable batteries and NMT. Your question about the Bluetooth headset. The Commission shall publish guidelines to facilitate the harmonized application of this article. Guess where is the guideline? Okay, don't shoot the messenger, okay? That's what I mean with Product IP is ready. We are as ready as you, but I will tell you how you can prepare as we are preparing. In Brussels, they're simply not ready with everything today. Yeah. What you can do to prepare yourself, you really have to have a discussion if you want to continue buying products and importing them with batteries, or that you import them without the battery. Why do you want to have the whole battery problem on your desk if the consumer can just simply buy a battery in the store and add it to the product? Yeah. If the problem is too big, maybe the solution is to make the problem smaller. Yes, but we can make money on batteries. Okay, this is I don't say that you don't need to do it. It's a business case. Calculate if you can make money on batteries. Yeah. But it might be an option not to do. I actually wrote on LinkedIn some certain products, maybe they will benefit from a supercapacitor rather than a battery, which is not in this legislation. Okay, this is a technology solution. Might be applicable for small deco items with LEDs. And if you do have products with batteries, do you need to have them under your own brand? Or could you license them? You know, these batteries have my brand, but they're made by a battery producer. That battery producer has an EU address. So is the consumer really looking at who made the battery? I don't think that's relevant for them. Yeah? So if I brand a product, but I put my address on it, I am, as a brand owner, the quasi manufacturer. But if I license the manufacturer to use my brand, they are the manufacturer. Go to a toy store and look at Disney products and how many different addresses are connected to Disney branded articles. This is called licensing. You change the way responsibilities are dealt with in the market. Yes, we never did that and never considered that. I know, but you know, if the future is changing, you might really want to change the way you deal with that model. The third point, I think it's very relevant in general, not specifically only for batteries. If we would have a discussion today about packaging and packaging waste regulation, even though it might be vetoed by Germany and Italy, but it will come anyway, or you look at EU deforestation-free products or toys legislation, or it all starts to move into the same way. Do you know where you buy your products from? Do you know where they are actually made? Do they know where the raw materials come from? Have they shared it with you? What is the status of that supplier in terms of social compliance, environmental compliance? What is the status of the key mass value added parts of your product of the second tier, third tier? Yeah, my supplier doesn't know that. Yeah, that's not the proper answer for tomorrow. So mapping your supply chain is something that you and your supplier really should start doing. And you can use supplier profiles and product IP to start doing that. You can look at the quality of information in bill of materials, where your supplier maybe now makes a bill of material and he claims he's making all the plastic part, which is not a good definition of plastic because you know how to know it. And he's also making the paint, and he's also making the glue, and he's making everything because he writes his name as vendor for every part. You knew it's not true, but you never thought it was too important to bother him. I can tell you, start bloody bothering them about this. Because this is not info, this is non-fo, and it will really damage your speed to and access to the market. Yeah? So this you need to do, and I think the battery industry from the other end will start to certify itself. Certified mine, certified production, certified recycled industry using it doesn't make sense to test batteries to see how much recycled material is in the battery. You could do it, yeah, but the only thing that makes money from that is the laboratory. It's much better to have certified supply chains where third parties audit them and say, doesn't matter what battery you buy from this source, they're all certified. Means everything that they say about this battery is true. It's like FSC on a tree. Yeah, that should be sufficient when you want to have a sustainable tree source. By the way, it's not sufficient for deforestation-free products yet, but it says something about sustainable forestry. Looking at your products that you have batteries now, so they are incorporating batteries, can you actually replace those batteries conveniently or not? Are they soldered on printed circuit boards? That's not good, because then you cannot replace them easily. And the batteries that are in there, are they no names? They're supplied by the cousin of the nephew of the neighbor of the mother of the factory that makes the product, or is it a legit branded battery, and how about documentation? So regardless of my slide with what is applicable and when it becomes applicable, this has just to do with quality information. And I am with you. If you start to push that route today, it will take you 12 to 24 months, because that really starts to be on a level where you say, okay, they got the message, it starts to flow, it becomes efficient. I don't need to worry about most of them, and I can pay attention to those that I need to worry about. Yeah? Because whilst you are dealing with this, your business hopefully and probably will be growing, and new suppliers and new products will be added. Yeah, so this kind of thing doesn't require battery knowledge, doesn't require new skills. Ask questions, follow up on the questions, have an opinion about the answers that you don't get. Really start with this yesterday. It is written in this legislation, and it is written in many other legislations as well, that you really need a proper documented process supported by a system in order to meet due diligence requirements. This cannot be a shoebox full of paper. This cannot be spreadsheets, email, search engine, cloud storage, and even, yeah, we use AI. Fine that you use AI. It's not a system. Tools. Yeah. We are a system as intended to be a system, and we don't invent legislation, and we even didn't invent the process that is built in Product IP. We just merely automated it. You guys, many of you, 30,000, are testing it and come with feedback and give us reasons to improve certain aspects. Yeah, we are also never done with this. Yeah. Make a decision if you want to start building your own digital. I wrote down digital product passport system, or in the future maybe use ours. It's quite complex. It's doable for large IT teams. Hundreds of data points, dynamic data points, different pages in time. It's never finished, and it need to be up in the air, accessible by EU consumers in different languages. It's not an ABC system to build. But you can build it, but you make a buy decision or make or use decision can be made somewhere in the nearby future. This part maybe Andre will be able to tell you a little bit about. The extended producer requirements are considerable. The thresholds for what need to be recycled go up. There will be checks, there will be registrations, there will be paperwork to be fulfilled, and levies to be paid. And all the batteries are included in this system. There are even penalties if you don't step up your efforts there. So if you are really in the process of distributing products into the hands of consumers in all these member states, then there's a significant extended producer responsibility lying for you. And this could be a store. Yeah. Oh, I can wait. Now Saskia starts to laugh. No, you cannot wait, because there's one country in the planet, it's one small area in Europe trying to defend, like Asterix and Obelix. The French Decree 2027/48 actually already has requirements that you need to inform the French consumer about the percentage of recycled material used and how much of the material in a product, packaging or battery actually can be used to be recycled. So for packaging electronic products and batteries, you need to mention that somewhere publicly accessible for the French consumer. If there are substances of very high concern over 0.1%, which in many batteries and electronic products actually is the case, simply because you cannot make certain parts without having substances of very high concern over 0.1%. Remember, it's not a prohibition. You can do it, but you need to mention it. And this is not, oh, I mentioned it in skip database. No, this is, we need to tell the consumer. You need to tell how much precious metal and rare earth is in there. So these are actually, if you look at the European level, future aspects of the product passport already. If you are in apparel and footwear, there will be even some additional chapters around the supply chain. They need to be made available publicly. So not on the product via digital means, QR code or URL somewhere on the website. Happy to announce that after some hard work, we will be able to launch a verified smart form for this aspect somewhere in the coming days. We have tested it, we have done the beta, and we will connect it to the requirements. But this is work. Your supply chain will struggle with this level of information and detailing. That's okay. If you know that they are struggling, that at least you know that they are struggling. Sometimes it's better to know what you don't know than to know that you don't know. This is a complete overhaul that really seriously will impact your business, especially certain aspects of products that use batteries will not be able to do the due diligence just by themselves. They need to have notified bodies verify their due diligence threshold. So this is what I could call in Germany Lieferketten Plus. You just cannot even do the due diligence by yourself. More and more products are battery powered. You see very nice luminaires that you can just stick on a magnet on the wall that have nice LED lighting. It just makes sense to have those kind of products from a design point of view. They're fun, they're cheap, they're cheerful, but they have batteries. And you don't want to throw away your design light simply because the batteries cannot be recharged anymore in the future. There are industries like the power tools industry that are working together to make like a standard for power tool batteries. Very smart. Yeah, you don't buy the power tool just because of the battery. You buy it for various other reasons. So those initiatives are very, very smart, and maybe they will certify that kind of initiative with the whole industry, and making the whole circular economy by himself. So many more products will batteries. Will there be sufficient batteries available that can pass all the criteria, including due diligence? I do think they are not. I think there will be a scarcity of certified materials to produce batteries. There will be some conflict situation in 2 years from now. The demand for certified batteries will come from those that require a lot of batteries. That's NMT, EV, and power storage systems. Yeah, so something will happen in the market. Prices probably will go up. Consumers should be able to replace batteries. Might result in redesign and retooling of certain products. It seems difficult now, but people that design new products will probably already incorporate these kind of things. The decision to buy and import products with or without batteries remains still on your tables. You do need product compliance management systems. You need to have information available for 10 years, nothing new. Declarations need to be made, sometimes merged. So you will have battery related aspects on the declaration of conformity with products that don't have a battery today. So you might have you have a power bank, and the power bank has a declaration of conformity, but basically the battery regulation aspects are not on that declaration of conformity. You might have a new declaration of conformity even for products that already have a DOC. We are working on that. When they tell us what harmonized standards we need to mention on it, then we will work on that. For those that are selling to governments, green procurement procedures are there. Now let me go to the questions and see where I need to go back to certain slides. I'll start at the last part. Will replaceability obligation of portable batteries also be for button cell batteries, no matter type of product? The answer to that is at this moment, no. Button cell batteries would be an exception. It makes sense. Many button cell batteries, even on motherboards of computers, are used to store certain data when you switch them off. But do remember that button cell batteries still need to be able to be removed for recycling purposes. But this is not a typical thing in certain products that consumers should not be able to replace by themselves. Although, and that's probably why the guides will come, throwing a watch because you cannot replace a button cell battery doesn't make any sense, right? So I would say here, nuance in place. The generic obligation won't be for button cell batteries, but there will be exceptions to the rule. Household electrical devices, the product already needs a CE and DOC, the product itself already needs CE and DOC, and batteries also need CE marks. So what is the difference with the new regulation? Well, the battery itself will have CE and a DOC by the manufacturer of that battery. If that manufacturer of the battery puts CE on it, they also need an EU address. If they don't put it on there, then they cannot put, if there's no European address, then you will become responsible for the battery DOC. And if you already have a product with a DOC and the battery is part of that, then the DOC of the product will change. Does it make sense? It makes sense. It's just a new aspect on the original DOC. But we cannot provide you with that aspect yet because there are no harmonized standards to be listed. If the user can replace the battery with another manufacturer, we as the manufacturer cannot guarantee compliance with the regulation. The battery is listed as a critical component in the test report, therefore we can only accept original spare parts, but that does not seem to be the aim of the regulation. Is this understanding correct? If the battery is listed as a critical component in the test report, then you need to stick to the battery. But what if the battery was not listed as a critical component? It was there's just a product with an AA battery, and you declare compliance with legislation for the product, and now your supplier changes the battery, then your compliance of declaration is voided, because the compliance of declaration mentions also the battery regulation, which is very specific for a battery, which has to do with the whole supply chain making that battery. So changing the battery will actually affect all the paperwork. So now it's up to you. Do you want a product with a battery, or do you want a product without a battery? It's very simple. Skip the whole paperwork, make a battery compartment, sell the product without a battery, let the consumer buy a battery from any battery manufacturer, let the consumer put the battery in the product via a battery compartment, and your problem is solved. And if that's not possible, then the consequence is indeed, Mario, that there's a lot of hassle. It's actually worse than somebody replacing a switch that is listed as a critical component, because you don't need to have the whole due diligence, and you even don't need to have a new declaration of conformity if you just change a switch somewhere. Yeah, it's complex. What do we need to put on the DOC? Is there harmonized legislation? I mentioned 4 times, it's not yet there. So for all household electronic products, only category portable is applicable and no digital product passport is available. Example protocol, speaker, vacuum cleaners, correct. That's correct. There will be a digital product passport, but a digital battery passport is just when the product is merely and only a battery or a battery pack. Will the exception to removable and replaceable requirements relate to water or product safety apply to certain toys or non-toy products that use coin and button batteries, children light trainers, light up? There's no guide yet. Serious, there's no guide yet. There's written down that it definitely makes sense that certain batteries should not be made replaceable by consumers because it will affect the compliance status of the product and introduce new risk. It might be that in certain situations, legislation said, then you need to assign experts that can replace the batteries, or just waive the requirement. So we wait for the guide on that. How do you get a correct DOC for batteries? Is this something that the supplier needs to deliver? Yeah, it could be, but that's a DOC, declaration of conformity, can only be made by a manufacturer. And I hope for you that that manufacturer has a European address because he needs to be responsible for that in Europe. But you're right, it's a product on its own. There are certified components. There are also components with CE in products. Switches have CE on a product, or a fuse can have CE, or a bulb can have certain declarations of conformity, not CE specifically. If you decide to measure residual state of health of battery packs in-house, do you need to get measured calibrated by the International Bureau? Very complex question. Not relevant for this, but the answer probably is yes. Do you need to mention the battery direction on your DOC for products that extend in battery? Yes. If not, how to tackle requirement that the battery needs to be easily changeable? Exactly. There, it's part of the DOC of the whole product. What about soldered button cell batteries, not easily changeable? Exactly, exception in the legislation, but still need to be able, because soldered can still be easy to remove for recycling. Yeah. Portable battery pack. Take waste pack batteries by manufacturer. Is it a single point? Oh, too complex for this. This is not a one-on-one consultant session, guys. Come on. In the Mentimeter, also a lot of questions there. According to which regulations, directive standards, must portable batteries be tested, and when do they have to bear a CE mark? This will apply to all batteries. Welcome to use product IP. Then you get that answer for 95 euros. In case of Bluetooth headphones, where small individual lithium are used, that already mentioned that one. Does it have to be possible to replace batteries with new ones, even if they're not commercially available? This is all about all batteries, doesn't matter shape. So the answer is yes. Listen, it is very simple. If you make products and the whole product become obsolete because the battery doesn't work and the total value of the product is much more than the batteries, then we don't want that product on the market. This is the essence of this legislation. Yeah. And it's become essential that to understand that certain products will become obsolete and cannot be sold in Europe. It's the same that some of the lamps cannot be sold, the same that you cannot smoke in your office. It's different things in time. I really hope that some of you, I'm sorry to say that, finally get the message. Really need to land in. Are classical power banks also considered and affected here? I would say that these are definitely waiting for the guide from the EU. It doesn't really make sense to be able to replace something on a power bank. You could say, is there an industrial pack lighter than 5 kilo to deliver power? I do agree. A power bank is just batteries. Yeah, I do agree. If the batteries are run out of the power bank has no function because it's purely batteries. I'll wait for the guide, but I'm with you. This should not be affected. Will it affect earphones? Easy remove and replace? Definitely yes. Definitely yes. What are the upcoming rules concerning replaceability of batteries in electronic products? Solder battery on a PCB considered replaceable battery? No. CE marking mandatory on battery itself, which is part of industrial battery equipment, or the CE marking on the final product is enough? No, I would say no. The battery itself is a part. You have switches in products that have their own approvals and approval marks, like you have capacitors. So I wouldn't worry about this because the battery industry will settle that. The battery industry will start to produce battery cells that meet requirements and have appropriate information to share with you. Otherwise, they cannot deliver that component anywhere. Look at it with chemicals. You need to have a safety data sheet. Yeah, this is becoming a standard, and this is not just Europe asking this. How many batteries are allowed to stock in your warehouse? I have no idea. This depends on your license of the warehouse and your municipality. It's nothing to do with this legislation. For portable batteries, is it only need at the moment or until new delegate act comes to the regulation report for each type of? I really have no idea what is the question. Is there already more information about the diligence requirements? Yijn. There is, of course, the United Nations SDGs, so there won't be new, but I think they will be focusing on different aspects. My guess would be, look at EU deforestation-free products, what they have written down. Yeah, before we had EU timber regulation, where they say if you use wood, the wood need to come from a tree, and the tree need to be coming from a sustainable managed forest. And the deforestation-free products go a little bit further. It's not just enough to replace the tree with another tree. You really need to look at the impact of that process on that part of the environment. Do you have to change the flow of a river in order to make that forest sustainable? That would not be good. What kind of animals are living there? So you put the tree back, but was it all? So different aspects, including people living there, indigenous people, the rights of them. Maybe Andre also have an opinion about it, but I cannot see that the due diligence requirements will be much more than you can actually imagine looking at the EU deforestation-free products. Look at that. So geolocation, where is the raw material coming from? Who was the mine? How about carbon footprint? Yeah, how much CO2 is actually produced during mining, during production, during shipment, during warehousing, during processes? Yeah. So it is silly to expect that you, at the end of the supply chain in Europe, need to do the due diligence for an industry. This industry has only one chance to survive, and that is when they start to build it up from the mine to the factory to you. Yeah. Imagine that you are responsible for a battery producer manufacturer. Would you sit and wait till your retail customers start to ask for this? You will be fired tomorrow. And so somewhere in the middle, these two processes will meet. My question is, are you ready to accept that? You need to make decisions about products that they are not aware of because they just simply supply you with the battery for the product. They are not involved in the decision making about the design of products. You just supply a battery with information. And if you cannot deal with that information flow, then you cannot meet this requirement. So take that part, as Kimberly Boss, that who we partner with, already say to us, focus on what you can change and focus on what is in your scope. Will all the battery manufacturers be there that produce batteries today? No, because if you have no-name batteries from no-name factories that have no diddly-do idea what they are doing, they'll be gone. Yeah. Harmonized safety requirement portable batteries? No. Will they come? Yes. There are standards, but they're not yet produced. They need to be published under the new directive. Which battery types battery passport required? I mentioned that already. If you have batteries without CE on stock in August, oh yes, definitely. If you already have imported products, you already have placed them on the market in Europe, you can always make them available in the market. You only need to participate in the extended producer responsibility part of this legislation. Does the notified body need to be EU based? Can we use notified bodies outside of the EU too? There cannot be notified bodies outside the EU. So that's good. Those notified bodies in the EU might have offices outside the EU. That's something else. No standard rechargeable batteries for consumers. Doesn't really matter. Already mentioned. Okay. Time is running out. A lot of questions, but definitely will not throw them away and address them somewhere in an FAQ in Project IPedia as well. Andre, can I still quickly shift for a few minutes to you and ask you to share a little bit knowledge about what is going to happen with respect to the extended producer part without giving everything away, because I know they can go to you as well for that.
Yeah, sure.
Answer. Yeah,
sure.
Because it is it's not the same.
Well,
a little bit.
Not so many things change related to specific EPR obligations, to be honest. We still have that member state approach, but the producer definition is somehow sharper, in my opinion. Because especially when you work with retail, at the moment, often the retailers require you as their supplier to deal with EPR obligations. But it looks like that's not possible in the future. Because it's a very, very clear approach. If I import stuff and sell it, I'm the one, or sell it in my member state where I'm located at, I'm the producer. If I have something produced using my brand, my name, and sell it in the member state where I'm located at, I'm the producer. And if I sell to end users in other member states where I'm not located, I'm the producer. And that's then, well, I have to deal with things. I have to appoint that authorized representative for extended producer responsibility. Right. Deemed to be a producer in another member state where I'm not located at. That's a very bureaucratic burden, if you ask me. Right. And something which is really a mess, if you ask me, is that if I sell to batteries on different markets, the costs have to be shown separately to the buyer, to the end user of the batteries. So there will be like visible fees, maybe related clauses to it in every member state, knowing that the costs for EPR, collection, treatment, consumer information and stuff are different in every member state. That somehow sucks, to be honest. Yeah. And there will be registers. And there will be registers. I mean, there are registers in like every member state, but of course you have to deal with those ones if you're affected. And there will be more and more schemes, because at the moment there are a lot of schemes related to portable batteries, but not necessarily to the other types of batteries. But probably there will be more and more schemes also dealing with these types of batteries in the future. I saw your LinkedIn post. I know you have some basic information available as well. So if you provide me with a URL to where I can point the audience, then I would be very grateful for that. So then sure. we'll add that to the information. Yeah, sure. I will add another information and source also. Probably you already have that aware, but there is already like some kind of information or a hint on how the guidelines related to the replaceability may look like. Yeah. Because it's a study of the European Commission, and well, there is a document available, and the information which is there shall find their ways to the delegated act. And maybe another thing, because referring to the FAQs, which is relevant, is just a sentence in Article 11, number 7. any natural or legal person that places on the market products incorporating portable batteries or LMT batteries shall ensure that those batteries are available as spare parts of the equipment that they power for a minimum of 5 years after placing the last unit of the equipment model on the market, with reasonable and non-discriminatory price for independent professionals and users. I know that question was there in the FAQs.
Yeah, that phasing out. Yeah, but 5 years, you know, after 5 years, those batteries are gone, basically. All right. Thanks for that. We'll point people towards you in the documentation that we share. Very quickly back to the conclusions. Thank you all for staying an hour and a half, which is quite amazing. 137 people. There's a lot of questions. Don't worry, we'll write them down and address them somewhere, and there will be more questions to come. There's definitely will be information published by the EU government and harmonize certain standards. So if you really want to stay up to date without using Project IP, then stay connected to us via the email preferences. I know some of you already signed up. Download the Project IP app, iOS or Android. So we are releasing version 2 of that app very soon. You will also have access to some of the relevant sources on Project IPDR via the app. A lot of context becomes more clear. At least then you have your information warnings in the pocket. And follow us. This includes Andre as well and myself and Project IP on LinkedIn. That will be highly appreciated. Small word, I cannot state it enough. Andre and Kevin Rodler and I, we come up with a pressure cooker training March 6-7 specifically for the German audience first, and because the training will be in German language. You know, if you look at this legislation, it is so layered and it's so complex in the sense that it involves product processes, supply chain due diligence. You really need to understand the lingo, the interactions, and that you're actually dealing with change management as well. So we have a 2-day pressure cooker session in-house in a hotel somewhere, because we feel that it's not just about sharing information, but also building a network with problem owners somewhere else in the industry that you actually sometimes can call and, hey, how are you dealing with this? And can you help me with that? You need a network to start dealing with this. If you haven't signed up yet, go to the link. It's worth the money. You know, you can get a lot of value in those 2 days. If not for you, maybe somebody that you join. For today, thank you for being with us for an hour and a half. Quite amazing. Keep calm, stay compliant, go away, recharge your own battery, do a walk. I will do it. Andre, thank you so much for being here, and definitely know that people will come to you for questions regarding the extended producer responsibility part for not only this, but also primarily also for packaging and electronic waste. It's especially with batteries, it's related most often. Some batteries are just batteries, but sometimes it's part of electronic waste, and it also have packaging. Sas, thank you for being here, because you will be able to answer some questions in the future as well when they reach out to you dealing with the support part of Project IP. Wish you all a lovely day, and we'll share this recording and the slides with you via a WeTransfer link very soon. Thanks for now. Bye-bye.